Hello, welcome to episode 3 of the Ski Instructor podcast. My name's Dave Burrows, I'm the director and owner of SnowPros Ski School based here in the Port du Soleil. And this week I've got a really interesting interview for you with a good friend of mine, Ali MacGrain. Ali is a trainer and instructor at Squaw Valley in the US. So we're going to get a really different perspective this week on the world of ski instruction. The last 2 episodes have been quite Basie-centric with Phil Smith and Jazz Lamb. Ali is trained within the PSIA system, Professional Ski Instructors of America system, and also within the New Zealand Ski Instructors Association. So we've got a couple of different perspectives there. Ali was over here in Europe, so we have a quite interesting chat. Also about his time over here, but actually the focus of this one is probably a little bit more over the pond focused. So I hope you enjoy it. Enjoy listening to the conversation that we've had. So, Ali MacGrain, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
No, it's great. The reason I really wanted to get you onto my podcast is because I've talked already to 2 quite Basie-centric guys. You know, Jazz Lamb is kind of Mr. Basie, and Phil Smith was kind of there at the start of it and was involved right in the centre. But what I wanted is a different perspective. You know, we're probably going to get a lot of listeners to this podcast from I guess the US, and I really wanted to kind of get differences in perspective. So that's really why I wanted to get you on.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think so. I think it could be really cool. So really, I'm going to give a bit of background because when we first met, I'm 100% convinced that it was on the Common Theory Basie course somewhere in Scotland.
It was, yes.
It was, wasn't it? And
yeah.
And we spent a week kind of in their classrooms. This is when part of the must have been part of the level 3 Basie,
yes,
where
yep.
you had everyone had to make this pilgrimage back to where Basie started, which they don't do anymore, by the way. That's gone.
Really?
Yeah, no one has to go anymore. So you know, I don't know. It seemed like a bit of a rite of passage at the time. You know, we were camping on some, I don't know, campsite somewhere doing something or other, and went to all of these conferences. And to be fair, it was pretty good. I think the content was cool. But we met then, hit it off. We kind of kept in touch, and then I think the next time that we saw each other, because you came back to Europe for some reason, and could you fill us in on why were you back in Europe? What was your, because you were in the US, you were doing kind of back-to-back winters, US, New Zealand. And then for some reason you popped up in Europe. So what were you doing at that time?
Europe had always been something that I'd wanted to do, somewhere I wanted to go and work. And I'd heard the tales of endless amounts of money and etc. And I've never really grown up skiing in Europe. I grew up skiing in Scotland. I know Scotland's part of Europe, but it's not continental Europe. And I like to experience different cultures and ski in different places, ski in different resorts. And it was just always something that was kind of on my radar. And I suppose as well, you know, I kind of had aspirations of, you know, maybe one day, attending, you know, the Interski conference and representing a country, and you know, it felt sort of right and fitting to, you know, try and pursue, you know, the Basie thing to represent, you know, Britain someday. Not that eventuated. But yeah, I'd been in the US for quite a while, and the whole visa scenario was work visa was really tightening up quite a lot, and it had gone from, you know, in the early 2000s, gosh, there were probably hundreds of resorts that you could work at in the US on the H2B visa. And at this point that I went to Europe, things had really tightened up, and there were literally a handful of resorts left in the US that you could get an H2B visa for.
Okay.
So yeah, so I'd always wanted to do it, and the timing was right with all the visa stuff.
All right. And so you were if I remember rightly, you were in Verbier. Was that Verbier
Correct,
first,
yeah.
and then the Three Valleys? I can't remember. You doing
Yes.
some sort of level 4, I don't know, training program or something with NewGen, if I remember rightly.
I was working for NewGen as a full-time instructor.
Yeah.
Let's say full-time in inverted commas.
Yeah.
Just because number of hours, nothing else.
Yeah.
Definitely had and still have a level 4 training program, but I wasn't involved in that. I was just kind of there to work and do a bit of training myself.
Mm. Okay. And so then I don't know. I mean, I don't know whether you probably have days like this all the time, but we managed. I can't remember why, but I popped over when you were over in the Three Valleys, and it was Courchevel or something we met in.
Yeah.
And we had an amazing day bombing around. And at that point, I thought, oh my God, I found like a kindred spirit, because this guy is as much of a ski geek as I am. And we spent, I don't know, I remember it as a kind of pretty cool day. We went all over the place. The terrain was pretty cool. And we chatted a lot about skiing, which I thought was just one of those great days, and I'm really into this concept at the moment where it's not kind of where you ski or what you're doing, it's kind of the people that you're with, and that day really kind of is seared in my memory as a really great skiing day that we had.
Yeah.
Cool. And then I suppose the Euro dream ended at some point for you, and you went back to New Zealand and then the US. Is that right?
Yeah. I kind of decided that I'd had enough of melted cheese and potatoes cut in different fashion.
I hear that. Oh my God.
And I wanted to go back to the US, so I via a Facebook group called, I think it was Snow Sports Instructors of the World.
Yeah.
I reached out on there, kind of saying, hey, who in the US is doing H2B visas, seeing as I needed to be sponsored to work.
Yeah.
And two folks who I know through PSIA, who are on the PSIA national team, got back to me and they said, oh, hey, Northstar in Tahoe are doing H2B visas, and for some reason they're specifically looking for sort of New Zealand and Australian qualified level 3s, full certs, examiners, whatever you want to call them.
Why was that? That's strange.
I don't know. I never asked the management, why that was the case. I can only imagine. It's because the New Zealand system and the Australian system have a pretty good, reputation around the world, for producing, decent skiers and pretty high quality instructors. With a really good understanding of pedagogy and turn mechanics and biomechanics, etc. So yeah, I put an application in and was accepted, and yeah, that's the story of my return to the US.
Okay, well, while we're on that, so you were in Northstar. So what were you doing at Northstar when you were there? What was your role within?
So I started out as they employed me as an advanced educator, which is sort of a level above a level 3 instructor, and predominantly my role was meant to be instructor training, so training people for certification was the main focus. And then when it got busy and the instructors couldn't do training, I ended up teaching privates, and I did that for three winters.
Oh, check you out. So you're just doing instructor training all the time, and then every now and then you have to come down and get your hands dirty and teach real people.
Yeah, gotta get in the trenches, about 10% of the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, great gig.
Yeah.
And some people in the management team at Northstar, saw something in me and they wanted to put me into more of a sort of a leadership role. So I got a call over the summer, past summer, to say we are looking for 2 people to step into these roles as lead trainers at Northstar. So you would kind of act as a mentor to newer, younger, greener, less experienced trainers. You'd still run certification training, write all of the outlines, the training plans, whether that be for 5-day new hire training, whether that be for 10 weeks for level 3 training, etc. So I went through the interview process there, and was offered. There were 2 positions and was offered one of them. The other one went to the guy who'd originally been brought in with me 3 years previous or 4 years previously on the H2B program. There were just sort of 2 of us brought in that year.
All right.
On the ski side of things, he was an English guy qualified in the Australian system. So the 2 of us got those roles, and so I did even less teaching of the general public.
Yeah.
And then actually started doing less training and started driving a desk and henpecking at a keyboard a bit more often.
Yeah. Well, this is the paradox, isn't it, of the high performer? It happens in all organisations. So what happened? It used to happen back in the day before I was a ski instructor. I was had various jobs in the city and stuff. But I remember one particular broking desk that we were on, and they took the best broker and made him a manager of people. And to me, that didn't really make sense, because what he was extremely good at was being a broker. What he was not extremely good at was being a manager. And you kind of take that sales specialist, if you like, out of the front line, or that ski instructor specialist out of the front line, and then you put them behind a desk. I've never really seen the sense in that.
I absolutely agree. Some people are just born to do what they do. Some people are born to manage and lead, and some people are born to like you say, sort of be in the front lines. So I found myself sort of being taken away from my passion a little bit, actually standing out in front of the instructors and delivering clinics.
With these instructors that you're standing in front of and clinics, are they only, or were they only, because you've moved on now, so were they only from Northstar, or were they?
Yes, that's right.
So it was like a mountain-wide thing.
Northstar ski school employees.
Okay, and how many instructors do they have on the mountain?
I want to say that this season they had about 380, 390 ski and snowboard instructors.
No.
I don't know what the breakdown is just for ski.
That's massive.
It's pretty big considering. I think Northstar claims that it's got 3,500 skiable acres.
Right.
Yeah.
Does that translate into like kilometers and stuff?
What's that? Sorry.
What does that translate into kilometers? They say like Port de Soleil, for example, 650 kilometers of pistes or miles of pistes.
Okay.
Does it?
They don't use that measurement over here. They just do it by skiable acres.
Okay. That means nothing to me, but I'm sure it probably means quite a lot to some of our people that might be listening from the US. Okay. And so the new role that you're going to at Squaw, how does that differ from the one that you were doing at Northstar?
So the role at Squaw is a staff trainer and an instructor role.
Okay.
So I spend 50% of my week running staff training sessions, and that can be both certification focused and just personal development focused. And then I spend the other 50% of my week skiing with guests.
Teaching real people.
Teaching real people, yeah.
Amazing. Okay, cool. When you talk about certification process, then are you certifying instructors through PSIA, or are you prepping them for eventual exam taking through PSIA, or are you doing that in house?
A little bit of both. So I'm employed at Squaw to train people to prepare them for exams. And then I'm also employed by PSIA, the Professional Ski Instructors of America Western Division, to run educational events for our members, but also to certify people who want to become ski instructors and want to kind of move up the ladder and progress in that sort of certification pathway.
Mm-hmm. Oh, cool. Okay. Fine. So, and how many people are you running through that certification process a year then? Or a season do you expect?
In through PSIA or through Squaw?
I don't know. Either. Whichever. Or both.
I mean, as a sort of base membership, I think we have about 3,500 people who are members of PSA Western Division.
Yeah.
And I couldn't tell you what the numbers are of how many new people are coming in each year versus how many people are not kind of paying their dues and sort of leaving the. But when I look at our events calendar is incredibly busy, and more and more events just keep popping up.
Yeah.
And then through Squaw, I mean, Squaw must have a ski and snowboard school of, I'm sort of guessing here a little bit, but I'm guessing, somewhere between 350 and 400 ski and snowboard professionals.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've now only been working for Squaw for just under a month. And out of that, I've probably actually only done about 2 weeks worth of work because I've been away for PSIA and just away skiing and enjoying myself. But 2 days ago, I had 12 people showing up to attend a training for the level 3, which is a pretty substantial group. And then I was still getting calls whilst I was out on the hill because others wanted to join.
All right. Is the level 3? Excuse my complete ignorance. The level 3 is the top level. There's 3. Is a 3-tier system?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it goes 1, 2, 3, and then and it changes a little bit division to division. But here in Western Division, we have a thing called DTA, or Divisional Trainers Accreditation, and that's kind of the step. That's kind of a level up above level 3. Then after they've gone through the DTA process, there's an interview process which consists of kind of your skiing being evaluated effectively, and then you have to run a clinic for your peers, and based off of that, you either get accepted or you don't or invited rather than accepted. You get invited to become an examiner.
Oh wow! Okay, amazing. All right. So okay, but you say it differs from region to region.
Yeah, so just recently, actually, PSA downsized from, there were 9 divisions, I believe,
right, and
two of them kind of combined to I think there were maybe smaller ones. So now we have 8 divisions within the US, within PSIA, and each division has the level 1, the level 2, the level 3. And there are national standards that are set out by PSA National, and that these are national standards that have to, they're sort of boxes that have to be ticked, criteria that have to be fulfilled for people to get signed off for level 1, level 2, level 3. But then once kind of beyond that, it's up to the divisions in regards to how they bring people in to kind of join their education staff, their examiner staff.
Oh, okay. So up to a certain level, so up to level 3, you've got the same kind of base criteria nationally that everyone
Yes,
has to ski to and teach to in order to get those
yes,
certifications. And then regionally after that, it then there's a few kind of local variants as to how they how let's say the equivalent would be how you then go on to be selected as a trainer or something like that.
correct. Yeah,
Ah, okay. Oh, that's interesting. I suppose that America is so vast, right? That you're still going to have that sort of, I think the thing we forget, or certainly I forget, is just how vast the country is. So I suppose you've got, you know, you're going to have that sort of regional difference. You won't be able to standardize the whole thing in the same way that they have the same thing with sort of laws from state to state in the US as well.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was interesting the way that they do it in the Canadian system.
Mm.
They kind of have an Eastern, I don't know if it's called a division, but let's call it an Eastern division and a Western division.
Yeah.
And from my knowledge, and I could be wrong, or it could have changed, but from my knowledge, because their top level is the level 4. Like they kind of take it year about. So one year the level 4 would be somewhere in the Eastern Division. The next year the level 4 would be somewhere in the Western Division. And from my knowledge, again, there seems to be a pretty small kind of core group of examiners who examine the level 4 in order to kind of keep things aligned and consistent.
But that must be the same in all national systems, isn't it? It looks like the training body in most countries is I wouldn't say it's a closed shop, but it's definitely, there's only a few people that ever get to examine the top level. My experience on
I think
the level 4 British, I think is it's always the same faces that keep popping up.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I think sort of the difference that you were relating to, the vastness of the expanse of the country, the geographical size of it.
Yeah.
You'd be hard pushed to have, I don't know, let's say six examiners who only examine the level 3 in the US.
Yeah.
They would just be on a continuous road tour of the year.
Endless winter of exam assessing.
Yeah.
Okay.
God, that sounds miserable, doesn't it?
Well, I don't know. Some people, I reckon, would probably really get off on that, but who knows? Well, talking of globetrotting to assess exams, so the last time I saw you, in addition to the day in the Three Valleys, and I'm sure that there was another day that we spent in Verbier, because you were telling me about how good the tips were in the US, which I was kind of amazed by. But that's a topic probably for another day. But you popped up in Verbier, it must have been last year or the year before. And I don't.
Yeah, it was December.
It was
December 2 years ago.
It was, and I don't often drop everything, for anyone and go to see them. But you were in Verbier assessing a New Zealand examination.
Correct. Yeah.
So you are in essence a globe-trotting examiner. What are you still doing much work with the NZSIA, the New Zealand Ski Instructors Association, or is that going to fall by the wayside with your new role?
So I stayed in the US this past summer after getting married and filing paperwork and all that sort of jazz.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't able to go back to New Zealand. And part of the agreement as an examiner with the NZSIA is that you have to go to these yearly trainers trainings, and I was exempt for 1 year because I had a good enough reason not to be there. On the understanding that the following winter I would have to return to New Zealand and do trainers training and be involved in the alliance in order to remain a current examiner.
Yeah.
So this coming summer, my wife Jenna and I are sort of weighing up the options. Do we stay in California for the summer, or do we head down to excuse me, do we head down to New Zealand to do another winter? And if we decide not to go, then that will be the end of me as an examiner with the New Zealand Snow Sports Instructors Alliance until such time, we decide to maybe go back and I kind of get re-involved in things. But as a result of being an examiner with NZSIA, NZSIA is kind of going a little bit global these days. Obviously, they started off running courses in New Zealand. They branched out to Japan. They branched out to China. They're running stuff in Switzerland. So yeah, I was asked if I could head over to Switzerland in December of 2017 to run a level 1 exam with a colleague of mine, Yo-Yo. Yeah, and that's where we caught up, mate.
Oh, that's cool. So, well, in that case, while we're going down the road of NZSIA, do you think that I see a lot of videos coming out of the Southern Hemisphere, right? And they seem to be assuming, and maybe it's just a micro kind of cosm of what you see on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, but they seem to be going down the road of looking very, very much like they're trying to ski in the Japanese style or the Korean style. Really? That's what it looks like to me, with this sort of constant cross under. Yeah, and there's a big have you seen these videos where they're doing these kind of I think they're Japanese or Korean technical tests where kind of everyone's of doing massive cross unders. They've got their arms spread wide, and that sort of looks like to me where the Southern Hemisphere associations like the Australian and the New Zealand are sort of going with their movement patterns. Is that does that come while I've got you on, right, a New Zealand trainer, is that something that comes from within the organisation, or is that just a few kind of self-publicists on the internet who are kind of going down that particular road?
Yeah, it tends to be more the latter there, Dave. I've seen the videos that you're talking about, and there are definitely some people, both within NZSIA and APSI, the Australian Professional Instructors, who are kind of experimenting, and they're doing some stuff, and there are definitely attributes within the skiing that have similarities to kind of like you say, the Japanese, the Koreans. When you talk to kind of people high up in APSI and NZSIA, you look at the manuals. That's maybe kind of the videos that we're seeing on YouTube and Facebook, etc., are maybe not 100% sort of a reflection of the mechanics that those associations are actually looking for.
Okay, so it's not necessarily a national style, is what we're saying, because presumably, I mean, I can't imagine that within, say, the New Zealand manual or the Australian manual, it says you have to ski around like this most of the time. I would imagine that they talk about the benefits of how to transition across your skis in a number of different ways according to the situation, right? You wouldn't just go everywhere in this particular style.
Yeah. When I watch some of these videos that are out there, and it's a very sort of pronounced flexion move to change edge, or it's there's a sort of a dive across the ski to create some really high edge angles very early in the arc. One of the things that I've been noticing, and it's sort of typical of these sort of movement patterns, is where the pressure is actually kind of coming on, and the pressure tends to come on a little bit later in the arc. And I can't speak to APSI because I'm not involved in their system. But NZSIA, there's a big influence from World Cup ski racing, and so they're really looking for lots of ski performance and lots of pressure building early in the arc, or earlier in the arc.
Because you see those videos, and I wonder, those technical test videos, they're very, very strange things. But they don't look to me like there's a huge amount of speed control there. Those guys look like they get faster and faster and faster as they go down the hill. You're right, the pressure comes late. You can see that from where the snow sprays. And it's a very, very specific niche thing, I think, that those kind of technical tests with that particular style. Yeah, I would be wary of going down that road myself if I was, if I was looking for a style to ski in or an experimentation sort of road to go down.
Yeah, when it's funny that you mentioned the speed control, because I was talking to some of the guys who were on the New Zealand demo team for the last Interski in Argentina, and they were saying that some of the demonstrators from the countries that you've been talking about, sort of Korea and Japan, etc. They said that it was incredibly impressive at how fast they were going down the hill, but they made a similar comment in regards to speed control.
No, well, it's kind of how it is, because when you look at a cross under turn, right? If you're crossing under all the time, in the transition, your ski it's the quickest way to get the skis through, and the skis shoot through in that cross under transition, right? So every time you do that, you're getting faster and faster and faster. There's only so much pressure you can dump, right? And that looks to me like one of the objectives of those technical tests is, can you manage that crazy pressure? That sort of looks like maybe that's what they're judged on. I have no idea. I'm just fairly ignorant of it, to be honest.
When I was working in New Zealand a bunch of years ago, I had a buddy down there, Jae-san, who is from Korea, South Korea, and he now works in Japan, and he was telling me at that point that the reason that kind of the Koreans ski the way that they do is partly because the general public think it looks cool. Right. So in an effort to attract people to the sport and to retain people, there's an element of kind of keeping them happy with the aesthetics.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that sort of makes sense then, doesn't it? Okay, yeah, and also I noticed that all of those videos, right, those videos where people are doing that, they're only doing it on a certain pitch of slope. It doesn't ever look like it's steep. It doesn't ever look like it's icy.
Yeah.
And I wonder if they can make those same moves on something that's really steep. I know that you see guys crossing under on the World Cup. The World Cup is a whole different beast, right? But also you see in the World Cup that not everyone's crossing under in the World Cup. They're using a real blend there of all sorts of different bits and pieces, and essentially it would, don't know, to me it just looks like they're doing whatever works at any given time. There's no set movement pattern. It's like what is appropriate for here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we don't know when we watch World Cup skiing, watch any skiing for that matter, we don't know the intention at that one moment in time. Was there intention to move the body in such a fashion, or was the intention to they got late on a previous gate and they're just doing whatever they need to recover their line. And I think that sometimes we kind of fall into that trap of we watch one turn over and over and over again. We kind of see certain things happening and we try to emulate that. But that might have just been a recovery maneuver.
Yeah.
So we end up trying to emulate something that's potentially not, something that athlete is actually trying to, constantly do.
Yeah.
And going back to your point about the pitch, or that we kind of see people skiing a lot on these sort of social media clips, and it does. It tends to be, what looks like kind of fairly innocuous blue terrain. That being said, I remember seeing a video from Riley McGlashan a few years ago.
Yeah.
And he's a big, self promoter, and lots of videos out there. Thoroughly nice bloke as well. And he made the same comment. People comment the fact that constantly it looks like I'm doing this stuff on pretty mellow terrain. And I think he was over somewhere in Europe, and he sort of took a video side on as they were going up the I believe it was a T-bar at the time. So you get a real true perspective on what that slope angle is. And it was considerably steeper in that profile shot than kind of what it looked like head on. So they say that the camera add 10 pounds. Well, I wonder if the camera also drops 10 degrees.
Yeah, something like that, isn't it? And slopes never look as steep as they actually are when you're facing them head on. But
yeah, for sure.
But I will say, I mean, Riley looks like someone who doesn't necessarily ski to a particular shape. He's doing whatever he does, and I see some. He's an excellent skier for sure. But I heard separately from an extremely good source, who is down in New Zealand often, and in a lot of these videos that are being made by some of the usual suspects are only done on a certain steepness of pitch because this is the only place that you can do that kind of thing. But in essence, there was some playing with the speed of it as well. So they might turn it up, 8%, 10%, which I thought was really, really... I was shocked when I heard that, but not surprised. Because I don't think you can...
I've noticed...
Yeah.
I've noticed exactly the same thing. And you watch a skier skiing down the hill and you think, by God, they're skiing incredibly fast. And then you start to watch some of the people in the background. Yeah. And you can definitely see the people in the background, moving faster than a normal person would. And it would appear that they have increased the speed of the video.
It would be a bit dishonest because it's kind of promoting a look to a certain look and a certain style, and that isn't necessarily achievable without speeding up. So it's not cool. While we're on the subject of New Zealand, and so you've spent some time. Sorry, not on the subject of New Zealand Ski Instructors Association. So you've now spent quite a lot of time within various frameworks. So you spent a bit of time with the British Association of Instructors, the Professional Ski Instructors Association of America, and the New Zealand Instructors Association. When I've looked through, so I've now spent considerable amount of time in the British and the Swiss system, and essentially we're all talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
There's nothing really new under the sun in ski instructing, I don't think. Within reason. What do you see much of a difference between what is being preached by the three members associations that you're into?
I do see some differences there. And I think part of the reason that we see differences is down to terrain and snow conditions. When the snow is softer, consistently soft, you can kind of get away with getting the ski up on edge, for example, and maybe not balancing too strongly against the outside ski, and the thing's still going to come around. Whereas if you're maybe skiing on bulletproof icy type conditions, then the technique I just talked about may not work so well. So we kind of see some variations there. But I also think it comes down to the general public, because at the end of the day, we're selling a product, and we're trying to retain business, and we're trying to attract business, and what the public want varies, region to region, place to place. And what I've noticed, certainly here in sort of the west coast of the States in Western Division, and when I worked in Utah in Intermountain Division, is the public are not by and large, the public are not that fussed about sort of dynamic skiing, high performance skiing, and they get to a certain point and they want to explore the mountain. They want to get into the bumps. They want to get into the steeps. They want to go ski some chutes and jump off of things. And they're quite adventurous. And I think that maybe influences the sort of the direction that instructor systems go. And maybe kind of what they focus on in the turn mechanics and the biomechanics.
I see that a lot in on various groups to do with American instructors, and every now and then there'll be a pop-up, there'll be a US instructor pop up and he say, enough of this technical chat, it's all about fun. Like, is the client having fun? It's like, well, it's kind of more to it than that, but I kind of see his point from a guest perspective, I guess. It's a little bit more focused on making sure that the guest has a good time. Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely. There's a big sort of customer service component over here in the US, and a lot of that comes down to, almost every instructing system that I've been sort of associated with. When you look through, they kind of have like a teaching model or a teaching cycle, and almost every system has something in there about negotiating some goals. So you're kind of finding out what the guest wants, and you've had a bit of a look at them skiing, and you're like, this is what the guest needs, and then you sort of compromise a little bit, or you kind of negotiate those goals. Because if somebody comes along and they say, oh hey, I want to learn to ski bumps, navigate my way down some bumps, and you end up teaching them, to do a high performance medium radius turn. You might have increased their skiing skill, tenfold. But if it's not what they want, then chances are maybe they're not going to come back. Maybe they are. Maybe they're going to kind of see the light, and but there's the chance that they're kind of going to say, I've just paid $850 for an all day private lesson. You didn't give me what I wanted.
I'm going to come back to that. I'm actually just going to write that down on my US versus Europe thought bubble here. Pricing.
Yeah.
Okay. So you think part of it comes down to how focused the systems are on the guest, and I'd say probably in the US that you've got, because the mountain owns the ski school and everything is done within, there's no independence, right, in the US as far as I understand. So it's about essentially the guest experience, and so your system develops because of that, and then it might have developed also in the US because you've got traditionally quite soft snow on the west coast, and then on the east coast you've got this kind of bulletproof icy stuff. I don't know whether that's actually covered necessarily in the PSIA, but how does that relate to, say, how the New Zealanders come at it?
So I think that New Zealand has a really well-rounded system, and one thing I wanted to just talk about that sort of relates to this is in Europe, they groom the pisted runs, and Ski Patrol kind of take care of the pisted runs. But if you want to go kind of off-piste skiing, you better make sure that you've got some friends and you've got a transceiver and probe and shovel, and you and your friends know how to use it. Yeah. And I think that sort of maybe deters the safety aspect, or the risks rather, maybe deter people from kind of doing as much of that sort of off-piste skiing, as maybe over here in the US or in New Zealand, because the way that it's set up here in North America and New Zealand and Australia, for that matter, is the mountain is the mountain with its kind of rope line, its boundary line around it, and everything within that, for the most part, is taken care of by Ski Patrol.
So it's fair game.
Basically. So yeah. So Ski Patrol look at things, go, okay, well, that is off piste, don't groom it, but that might slide. Let's bomb it. set off an avalanche and make sure that it's safe for people. So you get the same situation in New Zealand. So people are potentially a little bit more adventurous because the risks are lower.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And certainly, when I was sort of involved in BASI, don't get me wrong, there's still a sort of an off-piste component to the exams, but proportionally that was much smaller than for example, when you do the level 3 in the States. When I did my level 3 over here, I think we did 3 runs on piste in the whole exam, and everything else was done in the bumps, in the soft snow, the powder, the seats, etc., etc.
Oh, right. That's an interesting difference.
Yeah. So it's basically tended to spend more time on piste, and certainly in Western Division when I did my exam, it was the same sort of proportion, but that was off piste. Whereas in New Zealand, they seem to have a nice blend of the two, and sort of equal amounts of time and focus on the piste performance aspect, but also skiing that situational stuff, the bumps and the steeps, etc., etc.
Okay, so really, the biggest differences you see, probably, I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into what you've said, but it comes from how the mountains are in the US versus US and New Zealand versus Europe. But in addition, probably it would be fair to say, wouldn't it, that BASI, or the British Association, and the New Zealand Association is probably slightly more technically focused. Would that be fair to say?
In regards to on piste,
on piste performance skiing, I suppose.
Performance skiing, yeah.
Okay,
that's probably a fair summation of it.
Yeah. Okay. Good. And from the teaching side, we've been talking about the technical side and how to what the components are from sort of skiing on and off piste and whatever in the 3 systems. But from the teaching point of view, are there any differences that kind of jump out at you within those 3 systems too? For example, in the British system, I still don't think there's enough focus on teaching.
Right.
And I'll put that on record. It's fine. I think it should be doubled at least. But because it rewards those people that can ski extremely well, but what it doesn't do is reward those people that can teach extremely well.
And bearing in mind, I didn't actually ever do a teaching exam in the British system. A lot of my qualifications from other parts of the world, kind of got transferred across, so I didn't have to do it. But I've spoken to plenty of people like yourselves who have made that similar sort of statement. So I can't talk to it personally because I've never had first-hand involvement with it, but I have heard many people sort of the same sentiment as yourself. Now for many years, the system was people thought it was very prescriptive, insofar as it's like, here are the 12 steps that you kind of go through for a short term, and in the exam we want to see you go through these steps 1 through 12. And I think in some regards, NZSIA got a bad rap. It's like rote learning. All you're doing is regurgitating.
Yeah.
And I can understand where people are coming from, but the other side of the coin is that even if people did have a phenomenal knowledge of it, could pull out of their back pocket, and they could slot a member of the general public that they're teaching, kind of into that progression. So I think it gave people a really good baseline. And there are a lot of people out there who say that the real learning occurs when you got your level 3 in New Zealand or America, or level 4 in Britain there. And I think that's I'm a firm believer in that being the case. I've learned a lot since getting my first level 3 qualification in 2004. I think that the New Zealand system maybe kind of got slightly cut down for that prescriptive idea, but I do actually massively see the benefit of it.
Well, that kind of...
And in subsequent years... You go.
Sorry, dude. That rote learning, prescriptive style of learning worked awfully well for many. I'm not saying necessarily in skiing, but if you think about our parents and our grandparents' generation, that's how they were taught. They weren't taught in any kind of modern way. They seem to be pretty educated. They seem to know quite a lot of stuff. I don't think there's anything necessary. It's just another style of doing the same thing, right?
Yeah,
it doesn't necessarily
absolutely
have to be wrong.
Yeah. And I think there are many people in this world who sort of fall into that way of thinking of it's different, therefore it's wrong. It's not what I do, therefore it's wrong. It's maybe a little bit kind of closed-minded.
That's the world all over at the moment, isn't it, Ali? Like you're either in one camp or the other.
Yes.
It's especially where you are in the US, but it's getting more and more like that here in Europe as well. If you don't, especially you see, there's plenty of people out here chatting to me about things to do with Brexit and stuff, and you can't be anywhere in the grey area in the middle in Brexit, or you can't like a bit of it and not like another bit of it. You're either an absolute fool or you agree with me. And that's how it is, and I imagine it's much the same in the US when you probably get into discussions about the politics that are going on over there. The whole world is so polarized, and it doesn't necessarily need to be like that. I don't think.
No, and I think having involvement in multiple systems over multiple years, I've been able to kind of pick and choose the bits that I like, and I can use that. To benefit my own skiing, I can also use it to benefit the trainees and the guests that I'm hanging out with. It just gives me sort of some versatility and adaptability. But some people, all they know is one thing. And anything else is a little bit scary, and when it's a little bit scary, we tend to cut it down, don't we?
No, it's true, and I think you need to have that kind of breadth of experience so you can kind of pick and choose what works. I mean, I know that I don't know, when I'm on the teaching hill, there are certain things that I'll go over time and time again, but I'll almost be jumping from kind of one set of learning into another set of learning. Or one set of kind of theory into another set of theory, and I'll just take what I know or what I've read here and there. In fact, even for example, I read something the other day that was written by Jonathan Ballou, the PSIA. I was like, oh, that's really, really interesting. Fine, I can take that away and I can sort of file that over there, and I can pull that out when I need to pull it out. And you'll take bits and pieces from different systems, and I think if you've got kind of that breadth of experience or breadth of kind of knowledge of different ways of doing things, I think that makes a valuable difference certainly to your clients, right? Because if you've only got one way of solving a problem, or maybe the answer lies in a different thing entirely, in a different maybe it lies in the way that the Swiss look at things or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the real strengths of both the NZSIA and PSIA National is their open-mindedness and their progressiveness, and they're willing to challenge dogma. And I think part of that with the New Zealand Alliance is that they're small. I mean, if I was to guess how many examiners they have on staff, maybe maybe 40 or 50, somewhere in that sort of realm. And because people, by and large, tend to go to different places in the Northern Hemisphere, Japan, US, Canada, Europe, etc., etc. Then they come back to New Zealand. It becomes a sort of like melting pot of knowledge and ideas. And the Kiwis just seem to be pretty open-minded people and willing to kind of have a bit of a crack at things and give it a go. And if it doesn't work, then so be it. Back to doing what you're doing before. But I think it's a huge strength of the NZSIA. And I have seen how they've changed and rolled and progressed in the last 15 years since I got my level 3 down there. And the teaching exam now is far less prescriptive. And when I did my exam, there was one teach that we did. There were other components, obviously skiing and movement analysis and technical discussions, but we only had to do one actual teaching teaching presentations. And one of them can be what's the word I'm thinking of? You can kind of plan it out, in advance. And then there's another one where it's a case of you kind of have a bit of a look of I don't know if it's an individual in the group or if it's the whole group, and do something with the group or the person that actually improves them there, in real time. So you have to be able to think on your feet. You have to know turn mechanics and biomechanics inside out. You've got to be able to engage people so that they're motivated and they have that willingness to try stuff and to change and to improve.
It's funny that we did. This is a massive tangent, but not that much of a tangent, because when you become a real ski teacher, after you've done all these kind of fake exams, and this is probably one of my bugbears with the British system, but in the Swiss system, and I've had this in two aspects, but in the Swiss system, what they do is they let you loose on real people as part of your exam. And you see these guys in the middle of their exam, they're surrounded by actual kids, with real life situations going on. And I also did recently a Swiss Football Association qualification. So we spent 5 days in a classroom and then on the pitch doing various bits and pieces, to do with the theoretical stuff. But they said on Friday we're going down to, I can't remember where it was, FC Villeneuve or something like that. And we went down and they said you will be delivering a session with live kids of this age, and there they were. We went down there and the kids were lovely, but you had to actually have a real session that you delivered, and there I was in the middle of it. Now you could then what happened was you could see the guys that were really doing it, so were already involved in the clubs, already teaching, already kind of had a sort of body of experience and knew how to deal with kids, and they did extremely well, because they were just kind of used to it, or they had that kind of experience to know that when kids are kids and things start to go wrong, and you just got to roll with it. The guys that didn't have that kind of level of experience, that didn't have that experience, really struggled on their exam. And when you look at the way that some of these associations are structured, and the British Association is one of those, right? You see all sorts of people who kind of get their way through the system, having done minimal teaching. They might have had some of their hours signed off and they haven't done necessarily all of them, and they've done kind of maximum 2 weeks worth of teaching exams in total. And they pop out the other end and they haven't really been in any situation, they haven't had that situation where you arrive at the top of a lift and your client's waiting for you and the office hasn't given you any information about that client. So you're kind of literally making it up as you go along. Just that situation that you just talked about there. You really got to know your topic. It's a really interesting subject, that, I'm convinced that there's not that's something that a lot of instructor associations should put into their system, is actual actual sessions in front of your peers, but with real clients, or assessed sessions with real clients. You'd have to make it happen somehow with a local ski school or something. But it's a real you could get the local ski school to say, hey, free lessons, free ski lessons, but it'll be done by one of our trainees or something like that.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, it would be tremendously useful for people to coming through the system, instead of having this sort of fake exam situation where you're kind of teaching your peers and they're pretending to be 7 years old and they can all ski perfectly. It doesn't work like that in the real world.
Yeah. In the NZ instructing system, once you go beyond level 3, and there's a thing there called the trainer's certification, which is sort of a precursor to potentially becoming an examiner. When you do the trainer's cert, you have to deliver I think it's three different clinics,
right?
And there's a I can't remember if it's one or two of those clinics, but they're actually delivered to real life adults who want to be ski instructors.
Right.
Which was just it's a one-on-one. Here's your one person that kind of been training for their level 1. They maybe haven't sat the actual exam yet. You have an hour. Make this person better. Make this person ski better. And then again, because there's a whole exam kind of situation that you have to go through. Once you become a level 1 examiner in the New Zealand system, when you want to become a level 2 examiner, level 3, etc., there's a whole exam process that you have to go through. So again, to move up and examine at a higher certification level, again you have to deliver a couple of clinics, and again these are delivered to real life instructors. So when I was trying to get signed off for to become a level 2 examiner, I got given a group of people, and here's your topic, do it on these people and make them better, and then you've got over 45 minutes to do that. And then you had to do the same again to a different group with a different book. And it just becomes like a real life scenario situation, as opposed to kind of what you're talking about, this kind of this fakeness where you're kind of dealing with adults who are playing 7-year-olds or 14-year-olds or whatever, and they can kind of do everything absolutely perfectly.
Yeah. It's not it's just not real, is it? It's funny. So I'm sure I told the story in a previous podcast, but so we've got a new guy that I've just taken on who's a level 1 British guy. He's getting on really well. He's getting rave reviews from clients and stuff like that. But he's starting to now understand the real kind of realities of ski teaching. I'm kind of shoveling like 3-year-old kids his way. It's like, okay, well, I started him off with a couple of nice things, a couple of kind of 10-year-olds who could really ski parallel whole mountain, go and teach him some tricks or something in the snow park. But now he's starting to get some more interesting stuff. I gave him, 2 3-year-olds the other day. So, okay, we'll see how you get on with that for an hour. And various other kind of difficult problems that all will, these real life situations, when he goes ahead and sits his Basie 2, he's going to be super confident because he's dealt with real people. He hasn't just kind of done, a bit of shadowing here and there and then gone ahead and had his hours signed off and gone and done his next level. He's really getting stuck into the real guts of ski teaching, which is, it's not easy, and you kind of got to adapt to whatever's thrown in front of you on any given day. Yeah,
and let's be honest. Certification is nice. To become more certified, whether it's a personal goal, and it's to step up. But ultimately, it's not about the certification. It's about the product, the end product that person, regardless of what level they have, is giving to the guest. And I've seen plenty of those situations where you've got somebody who's gone through the system very, very quickly, done minimal amounts of teaching, and maybe they don't have a natural affinity with people. Their interpersonal skills are not, wonderful. Their emotional intelligence is perhaps lacking.
Yeah.
And then on the other end of the spectrum, you can have somebody who maybe has no formal qualifications, but they have that just innate ability to relate to people. They have that emotional intelligence.
It's a very, very underrated part of being a ski instructor. I think.
Absolutely. And I don't know if we are doing people, instructors, a favour or doing them a disservice, and if we're doing a disservice to the general public at large who are coming to take lessons, if we're sort of rushing people through certification levels without having done some of the teaching and learning the trade, learning their craft. And part of it, to be honest, is you learn so much out there on the snow by making mistakes, realizing that you made a mistake, recovering it in that lesson, and then realizing that you do that in a subsequent lesson.
Yes, yeah. Banking away that knowledge and then kind of drawing on it at a later date. It's it's incredible. One of the biggest I think difficulties. I wouldn't say difficulty, actually, is the wrong word. One of the biggest kind of things that I find is that I really get into the swing of my teaching probably by about January, but on any given new season. But you've gained so much in the previous season that the months, depending on how long your season lasts, the months from, say, the end of April all the way through to December before you start getting going again, unless you've got quite a good recall for all of the lessons that you've done in the years before, you kind of lose a little bit of that flow before you really get going into the new season. I've noticed.
Absolutely.
You kind of it takes me a while to feel completely at ease, without kind of rushing, without trying to pile loads of information into the client that maybe doesn't need to go in there. And as I get more experienced at this and older and wiser, I'm kind of I'm almost turning down the inputs that I'm giving into people, trying to minimize them almost to the purest form, like one sentence, maybe 2 sentences max. Try this. It might feel like this. And I think that is a kind of distilling process of all of the lessons that have gone before, if you see what I mean. Yeah.
Absolutely, and I experienced that this year when I came back. I had my first summer off in 20-something years where I wasn't in the southern hemisphere, doing back-to-back winters. I'd had 5 or 6 months away from being on snow and talking about it and delivering clinics and lessons and whatnot. And I knew the information that I wanted to deliver. I knew that how I wanted to pace the information. I knew that I didn't want to overload the trainees. However, I found myself just slightly stumbling over my words. But that recall, that recall for like, how do I succinctly say, this one point, wasn't quite there. No. After having the 5 or 6 months off.
It's funny, the temptation, I think, towards certainly at the start of the season, for me, is that you do that thing where you deliver the thing that you want to say, and then the temptation is just add a little extra qualifier on the end of it, and then maybe another one. And as the season progresses, I find myself doing less and less of that. So I'm kind of, okay, I've just said my piece now, ski, try it, and we'll talk about it, in 25 turns time. It's not,
if need.
Yeah, if need be. This thing, not, as opposed to this thing, and think about this, and maybe this. And that's too much, It's got to be like one succinct point, I think, is where the clarity in ski teaching comes in. If you can kind of boil it down to its purest part.
Yeah, absolutely. I look at the CAC model, and if memory serves correctly, the CAC model talks about with adults you can like 3 to 5 directions or steps or instructions where you want to put. And I was just finding if I gave people hey, I want you to focus on this in your skiing, and I want we're going to meet down at this point here, and you're going to leave 8 turns between each person, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
People could not do that. Those adults were not able to follow those 3 sort of simple instructions. So I've found myself absolutely just simplifying things. Leave a sensible gap, meet at this point, focus on this. So ultimately, they've got 2 things there. We're meeting at such and such a point, and I got to focus on this in my skiing.
Yeah.
And in conjunction with that, for years, I kind of thought, we talk about multitasking as a thing, and it's like men lack the ability to do that. And so when I was skiing with female trainees, female guests, I might give them 2 things to think about. Hey, make sure you control your speed by doing blah, blah, blah at the end of the turn and balance on your outside ski, for example. And then for a few seasons in New Zealand, I was skiing self-confessed world's leading neuroscientist. I don't know if that was the case or not. Told me it was.
Right.
She was and she was telling me that multitasking in her mind really was a sort of a fallacy, and that you can do it, but the efficiency of it is so lacking that you might as well just focus on one thing and do that one thing well and efficiently, and do it the majority of the time, rather than thinking about two things.
I've read a similar thing which said actually the brain doesn't multitask, can't multitask. All that it is it's good at doing, or those people that think they're good at multitasking are actually just doing a number of individual tasks in a sort of order. So multitasking isn't actually a thing at all. So actually, if you can keep your ski chat or your inputs into the client into really, really simple things, I think that benefits people.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you start to compare that with the skills acquisition model, it talks the average person, and it's not average. I get that, and I'm probably the type of person who drags that average number up. But it says the average is 10,000 hours of repetition.
Yeah.
To ingrain something, and it talks about in that associated of learning. When you change a variable, we add a focus, that our performance at doing that motor skill drops. So yeah, the more I've kind of got into some of the theories of the more I've tried to simplify things and just focus on one thing at a time. And when I'm out skiing with people, I try not to fall into that typical ski instructor trap of hey, you've just done 2 runs, doing this one focus really well. Now let's change it. Let's move on and let's add a second. Now I'm trying to kind of consolidate. And not consolidation with being like, hey, you've done it really well here on these two runs on this blue groomer. Now let's go off piste, or let's go into something steeper, or let's go faster. And with my knowledge of the skills acquisition model, I'm like, okay, you've done it on this blue run here. You've done it twice, great. Let's go into a different groomed blue run and do it there. And let's spend the rest of the day trying to ski all groomed blue runs and trying to do it in all of them. that we really consolidate that that muscle memory before we kind of throw anything too challenging at them, and then the performance dropping, and I ultimately kind of think value for money, especially here in the US, lessons are incredibly expensive, and I don't be doing anything that's actually hindering their progress, or it is actually kind of causing their progress not for them to deteriorate rather than progress.
Yeah, you can move them up the scale too quickly, right?
For sure, yeah.
I hope you enjoyed the first half of this podcast. I think there was some interesting stuff in there about movement analysis in national styles. What I wanted to say was that this is the first interview that I haven't recorded in person. So if you can imagine that I was sitting at my desk here in the Port du Soleil, with a microphone and also a laptop in front of me, trying to make it work in this sort of Heath Robinson way. So I apologise for if the connection on Skype dropped out at all and you missed some of it. But that was literally the only way that we could make this happen. And obviously Ali is over there in Lake Tahoe, and I'm here in Switzerland. So it's the best that we could do. But I think the audio came out pretty cool. The second half, we delve into some other topics, specifically one that's quite interesting to do with ski lesson pricing in the US and how much instructors are paid, and where all that money goes. I know that's a constant hot topic in the world of US ski instructing. So enjoy the second half, and I'll see you for episode 4. I've got a couple of cracking ones coming up in the second half of this ski season as well. So enjoy. See you soon. Well, since we're talking about differences, it's a nice little segue you brought me into. So there I was the other day in the car park at Morjan, and I was basically standing in a muddy puddle because the sun has hit the car park. And there I was, kind of my boots covered in mud, trying to work out how to get them in the back of the car without covering the back of my car in mud. And I remember one thing that you said to me once. You said that Europe sucks for that. You're constantly getting changed in car parks. and in the US, you have this nice cozy locker room with your own locker with all your skis in it. Picture a girlfriend on the door. That kind of thing. From a ski instructor perspective, what do you see as the main differences between kind of European skiing and US skiing? Muddy car parks aside.
Obviously in Europe there are a lot of independent schools, so people are having to put their hand in their own pocket and fork out for marketing. They're having to spend their time. You teach from 9 till 4, but then they're having to kind of maybe go to hotels and sort of drum up business. Whereas
describe my life,
whereas in the US, you work 9 till 4. If you want to go and hang out with your guests afterwards for dinner or drinks, or whatever, it's entirely up to you. But you're not having to be sort of out there canvassing for business. I definitely see that as a huge difference between the two. And I suppose it just depends on what sort of personality type you are, because some people love that salesmanship side of things, and they get a real kick out of it, and other people, maybe not so much. Within, in Europe, wages are significantly higher than they are within the US. What's the average wage, would you say, in France for a full cert instructor? 60 euros an hour, 50 euros an hour?
Yeah, I don't think it's as high as 60, to be honest with you. It depends on the structure of the ski school, but I wouldn't depending on whether they're domiciled UK or France, but let's say around €50 an hour, maybe something like that.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah,
probably
yeah,
you'd be getting close on if you were full cert in Switzerland. With a brevet or something. If you worked for a ski school, you might be getting close to maybe 45 Swiss or something an hour.
yeah, yeah. And and it varies across the US, but the region that I'm in here, sort of in Tahoe in California, for a fully qualified instructor, you're sort of looking at between like 22 and $28 US dollars an hour, which is a substantial difference.
It sure is when a full day private lesson is what, 800, did you say?
And again, it varies, but roughly in this region, you're looking at about 800-ish, 800 plus dollars for an all day private.
Now, maths isn't my strong point, but where's the money going then?
That's the thing, in Europe, you've got a small school. Maybe you've got, let's say you've got a school of 20, which is probably not that small in Europe. But you're not having to subsidize other departments. You don't necessarily need a big office or any office for that matter. You don't have a locker room. And in the US and New Zealand for that matter, your three money generating departments are ski school, food and bev, and lift tickets, and they actually subsidize a lot of the other departments.
Right.
So most resorts in the US that have a sort of a race team or a freestyle team or a mobile team sort of program, a lot of those programs either don't make a whole lot of money or they run at a deficit and they need to be subsidized by these other money making departments. They have departments, because places that I've worked that have like a host department. So that's kind of people who meet at a certain place at a certain time and they show people around the resort. And they have to pay these hosts, but people aren't paying for this product. It's a service that's provided by the resort.
Yeah.
So resorts have a lot of expenses, and if they paid us paid instructors at $50 an hour, when you start to kind of do the math on a $800 all day private lesson, you're paying $50 an hour. It sounds really good, but then something's got to give at some point. And maybe then some of the other departments that are providing a service but they're not generating income would then fall by the wayside. Or just the profit margin would for the corporation or the resort would be less.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying which is better, because it's a little bit of what works for you, a bit of horses for courses.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do make that same sort of statement in regards to the cost of a lesson versus what an instructor gets in the US, and make that same. Yeah, it's usually the facial expression that says more than anything else.
Well, I can assure you I was making the facial expression. All right, cool. Look, here's the last question for you, because we've been going for quite a while now. Although I do like this long form discussion, and I'm convinced that there's a place for this within the ski community or the ski instructor community. You've been going at this now. You say to me 43 or 44 winters back to back. How do you keep yourself fresh? The reason I say this. So I was sitting in the the cafe the other day with some of my instructors, and we were talking about, I think a couple of them are suffering from kind of mid-season blues or whatever, and you know how it goes, and we were sort of just sometimes I think there can be that the teaching skiing day after day after day remorselessly does kind of kill a little bit of your desire to go back up out the mountain kind of when you're done. The last thing you want to do is put your boots back on and go up there. How do you keep the motivation? How do you keep yourself fresh after all this time?
It changes. There were definitely some years, probably early to mid 2000s. So I mean, you're probably looking at that point, sort of somewhere like 15 to 20 winters in, where you're like, just don't want to go skiing on a day off unless it's a powder day.
Yeah.
Here I am just doing the same thing day in, day out, teaching.
Yeah.
And getting involved in different systems has kept it really, really fresh, and being just open minded to ski technique, and has helped as well. I kind of think, to go off on a bit of a tangent here. When children grow, their bones grow, first kind of quickly, and then the muscles are playing catch up.
Yeah.
And what I feel the ski industry is the ski technology just even still, and ski technology was just going nuts, and it was just like every year something was changing and someone was coming out and it was bigger and it was better.
Yeah.
And for me, that ski technology was kind of like the bone, and our knowledge and our understanding of, I talk a lot about sort of turn mechanics and biomechanics, but our knowledge and understanding of them in my mind was really playing catch up, and for a good few years, I feel that there was a lot of experimentation within the industry. Like, you look at World Cup kind of skiers, ripping down a GS course, arcing up turns in the early 2000s, for example, and they're like, okay, how are we going to try to emulate that? Oh, well, look at the edge angle they've got there at the top of the turn. They've got this massive edge angle. Let's do the same. Yeah. So they're kind of experimenting with things that maybe worked, that maybe didn't work. And from my own sort of personal experience through some of the different systems, there was a time where we were trying to create crazy, ridiculously high edge angles in the initiation phase of the turn, and you've got this really high edge angle. However, we're not getting the outcome that World Cup racer is, because something was lacking. And my belief is kind of in the last 8 years, 5 to 8 years, that our knowledge and our understanding of our sport has grown rapidly, and we're almost kind of aligned with technology now. And now we understand that edge angle alone doesn't create necessarily the best, cleanest carved turn, especially if it's firm, if it's icy. We also have to be balanced towards that outside ski, and we also have to be balanced along the length of the outside ski, so that the whole thing can engage. And just constantly and seeking out what's the contemporary buzz, what's the latest and greatest thing, and not just sort of listening to and writing it off, or going the other way with it. This is the latest and greatest thing. I'm going to implement this in my skiing at all times, at all levels. Yeah. Having we have a brain in our head, or some people do. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna apply this in different areas. I'm gonna see how it works for me. How does it is it substantiated by my knowledge of biomechanics is substantiated by my knowledge of physics. And if it's not, I don't just immediately disregard it. Usually I immediately go straight to Google.
Yeah.
And and I start to look some stuff up there. And at that point I may disregard it, or at that point I might go, wow, my knowledge wasn't quite actually where I thought it was.
Yes.
This is actually thing, I'll try and implement it. So for me, the short answer of how I keep it fresh is I keep learning.
Yeah, that's a common theme. The last two guests have said the same thing, and I think that's that being open to carrying on learning is a good thing. And actually, I think with kind of modern social media, I think that's actually, it's even easier these days probably to access the new than maybe it ever was before. There's all sorts of people. We talked about the self-promoters earlier, and there's plenty of that. Although it's sometimes a bit chaotic, that Elite Skiing Facebook page, for example, is very good. Is very good for that. There's all sorts of bits and pieces kind of pop up on there every now and then.
Absolutely. It's that old kind of cliche of talk being cheap. And I'm not talking in regards to other people. I'm in regards to myself. I try to make sure that I act with integrity. So I try to make sure that I don't just say, oh yeah, I try to keep learning, and then get off the phone from you and go and have a pint and forget all about it. It's all about the actual behavior. And for me, I like to live up to the things that I say. So these are not just sort of idle words that are empty words that sort of come out. This is stuff that I live and breathe and try to do day in, day out.
Cool. Well, that seems like a decent note to end it. Well, I'm going to end it on saying this. So before, I floated an idea to you that I'd love to come out and do like an ideas swap or maybe take part in your formation for Squaw if you're doing a sort of ski school formation somehow. I promise you that I will try and get out there for that this year. If you're down for it, and we'll put it on the record here, so that I kind of force myself to do it. If you'll have me.
Absolutely, yeah. Obviously, I'm not the boss, and we just have to run up the flagpole a little bit. But I can't see why MD would say no, and it'd be great to get you out here, and for you to kind of see what we kind of do with new instructors at the start of the year, and how we train them, and your thoughts and ideas, and how they could alter and ultimately refine that.
Super. Ali, it's been a pleasure to catch up with you. Thank you so much.
Dave, thanks for your time, mate.
If you wanted, I give everyone a chance for a bit of self-promotion, but I suppose the corporate, you don't need to promote your corporation at Squaw anymore, but if people want to get in touch with you for whatever reason, how would they best get in touch with you?
Ali MacGrain on Facebook is probably the best way. Send me a message there. I'm more than happy to answer questions and go for skis and look at videos.
All right, man. Well, I'll put a link in the show notes below just to just your Facebook profile if anyone wants to get in touch with you. But thank you very much for your time again, man. That's really appreciated.
Awesome, Dave. I will talk to you soon.
All right.